So I'm curious what your thoughts are on how somebody could actually build an AI employee that could help them. Let's say it's a solo entrepreneur that has nobody else around them. How could they go about building?
There's many ways to approach it. The first thing I would do is get you a chief of staff agent that their sole purpose is just to understand you and your business better than even you do. FOMO is real, and I think maybe a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they're behind right now. But if you look at the studies, I think it's really only a small percentage of businesses that are truly applying AI in meaningful ways. It's probably only 10 or 15%. All of the areas where you find yourself doing a bunch of context switching to not be able to do deep work, that is where I think AI can help a lot. Think of the areas of your business or responsibilities that are like constantly pinging you. So like if you just looked at your notification feed, you found kind of like the worst offenders. That's like where you should start.
So just to kind of get us started, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of your process that brought you to where you are now.
Sure. I kind of took a circuitous route to where I am today. I started as a documentary filmmaker, cinematographer, quickly built a small studio, producing documentaries and commercials for typically like small businesses and startups, but got a little tired of being behind the camera and wanted to be in front of the camera. So then I moved into consulting and management consulting and working with consumer brands to do design thinking and kind of rapid prototyping workshops. And then kind of just as that period of my career was ending, GPT 3.5 Turbo was out and I was experimenting with, how to use that for writing projects. And then all of a sudden ChatGPT came onto the scene and, all of a sudden like 500 million users were using it in just a few months, and just realized then that, I wanted to be a part of this new technological wave and, have been building with AI ever since.
Interesting. So you kind of took you weren't really in the AI or data space before that. You were more in the marketing space.
Yeah.
And consulting, like you said.
Yeah. And kind of the creative studio space, and then in consulting, management consulting, and kind of like product adjacent, like using human-centered design and other practices to help companies understand what their users need and want, and then try to build and test things quickly, so that rather than spending 3 years to take a product to market, how could we do it in a matter of weeks or months? And then just now with all the AI tools, that timeline has gotten compressed even further, where now I'm finding that, teams can ship things in a matter of hours or even overnight while they're sleeping. So it's just the compression of that time scale is really dizzying for folks. I think, that have maybe been used to building products and services.
Right. Interesting. So how would you say your day's going now? Do you spend most of your time building AI applications? What are you doing mostly with your days now?
So my focus now is to help small business owners, entrepreneurs scale their expertise without growing a team. And you might ask yourself, okay, well, how? And it's through AI. But I want to be really clear here. I'm not suggesting that people replace themselves with AI. I think every entrepreneur has, what Michael Gerber, the author of the Eve Myth, calls like the entrepreneurial fit, where they're like, oh, like, I have this really interesting intersection of experience between X and Y, and, I just have to like go and build this thing or build this service. That should never be taken away from them. So that like entrepreneurial fit that is, their unique ability, don't ever delegate that to AI. Like you want to continue to own that, and you can augment yourself, but don't ever replace it. It's all the other parts of your business that you're not operating in your unique ability, that's draining your energy and taking a lot of time. That's where, I feel like building AI agents and even redesigning your business around AI for, creating it like an agentic operating system. That's where I feel like people's focus should be.
No, that's super interesting. And why do you think people should implement AI employees now, and what makes this the right time to do it as opposed to in 2, 3, 5 years? You know what I mean?
FOMO is real. And I think maybe a lot of entrepreneurs feel like they're behind right now. But if you look at the studies, I think it's really only a small percentage of businesses that are truly applying AI in meaningful ways. It's probably only 10 or 15% of businesses that are doing that right now. So you're not behind. Let me reassure you, you're not behind. If you're thinking about this and experimenting with it, consider yourself in the top 10 or 20% of business owners. The way to get started is to kind of ladder yourself up from, I think there's probably 7 or 8 levels of AI use. And the first is the chatbot. So, ChatGPT, you put in a prompt, it gives you an answer. That's the first level. You can go all the way up to like the 8th level where you have an orchestrator or an agent that's autonomous and can spin up its own AI and agents to do work on your behalf. But there's a lot of work that you have to do to understand your business, where the constraints are, what are your processes, and give it a bunch of context and instructions to get there. And, there's a bunch of steps in between. And I just think, that's the journey that every business owner and entrepreneur needs to start on. So if you're using ChatGPT, you've already started that journey, and, you just got to keep going until, you ladder up to, where you're comfortable at in terms of using AI.
Before that, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's sponsor is my company, Mellow Media. We help businesses show up online without having to do it all themselves. Content creation to social media management, we help turn your ideas, expertise, and brand into consistent content that generates leads and builds trust. So whether you don't know where to start or you simply don't want social media taking over your whole day, my company, Mellow Media, can help you. Check out all of our links in the description. We can help you out. Just hit us up and we'll take it from there. Right. Interesting. So when you work with businesses, where do you see them using AI agents and where they can use AI employees the most?
So Barrett, what is the area of your business that you wish operated without you?
Good question. I'd say there's a few, right? I mean, obviously, like the accounting side, obviously, I don't want to deal with that. What else? Maybe even copywriting for social media, editing for social media. I've heard that's a good one AI can do nowadays. I mean, there's a ton, right? And it depends on the business too, I'm thinking as well, right? So yeah,
that's where kind of my consulting background comes into play is, going into client systems and understanding how their business works, what's their value chain, how are they creating and delivering value to their clients and customers, and then figuring out where the constraints or bottlenecks in the business are. Without fail, it's always like the founder or the owner of the business that is the constraint in the business. Entrepreneurs, I feel like, are a bit, A-type. They have trouble delegating. They're a bit of, control freaks.
Yeah.
And like, you just have to shed that. You have to begin to have little small experiments with AI, build trust in it that, it knows who you are and what you do and what your voice is, so that you can begin to shed some of those things that take a lot of your time and drain a lot of your energy. That's typically where I focus on figuring out how we might apply AI into your business.
Interesting. So kind of off that, where do you see the most business owners and teams lose the most time and money that AI employees could help mess with?
That's interesting because, there's kind of two ways to look at it. So you can think about AI systems that will grow the business, increase revenue, or you can look at it in the way where it can save costs. And I think the conversation today, summer 26, is really just about like cutting costs. You hear about like the AI layoffs and, people being replaced with AI in the pursuit of saving money. You can only cut costs so much, but I think there's not an infinite, but there's trillions of dollars, I think, available in the economy for applying AI. And so I think looking at the more abundant side of the equation is where you should start. So for kind of practical tips for that entrepreneur that's working 18 hours a day and 7 days a week, I think that all of the areas where you find yourself doing a bunch of context switching to like not be able to do deep work, that is where I think AI can help a lot. So think of the areas of your business or responsibilities that are like constantly pinging you. So like if you just like looked at your notification feed and you found kind of like the worst offenders, that's like where you should start. So like if you get a bunch of Twitter and Instagram notifications and DMs, that's something that you could work with. If you wake up to 500 emails every day, that's something that AI could help you with. And, if you find yourself, unable to create either the marketing content or even just like client and customer onboarding content, like sending, preparing proposals and sending agreements and all of that. Those are 3 areas that I think are extremely ripe for applying AI to.
Interesting. So what do you think if a business is not looking at AI as a tool that they could use to potentially cut costs or grow revenue? What do you think that's costing the business, and how is it I don't know, for the other businesses that are doing it, are the businesses that aren't, are they really falling behind? Do they not stand a chance moving forward, or what do you think?
Yeah, interesting. So this is kind of like the fear question. It's like, I woke up a few days ago and was like, oh gosh, like Anthropic just launched a new model, Fable. If I'm not using it,
Fable.
like I'm not, I'm going to be falling behind. The truth is like big enterprise businesses are still operating on models that are, 5, 6 generations
Mhm.
behind. So like there's companies using, GPT 4.0, which is like ancient now, even though it's only like a
Right.
year old. But like they have systems and processes that are leveraging that AI like in their customer service, where, they're responding to most of their customer service tickets like within 5 minutes, and, they're cutting their customer service costs, in half or even more than that. So one of the biggest mistakes I see small business owners make when it comes to AI is working with too many tools and having too many sources of information about which tools they should be using. If you do only one thing after this podcast, it's simplify your tools to do a single tool and a single source of information, and kind of keeping abreast of what's going on with AI. I try to be tool agnostic. If you really want to know kind of what my stack is, we can get into that. But I think if you do nothing else, it's just choose a single tool and a single source of information and just focus, at least for
Mm.
a month. And then you can kind of branch out and explore. But like if you're just getting started, just choose one.
Interesting. So kind of along those lines, when you say just use one tool, do you mean, like, for example, just use a ChatGPT to do what exact work do you think one tool could do for a small business? I'm curious.
Yeah. The kind of open secret in the world of AI is it's only one technology that every tool is based on. So Google published their Transformer research paper that birthed large language models, and almost to a T, every single AI tool is just based on that single foundational technology.
Right.
So underneath all of the tools, the big three, like Google's Gemini, OpenAI's ChatGPT, and Anthropic's Claude, it's the same technology under the hood. Now they've diverged, through training and specialization, but it's the same technology. So it's kind of like an illusion that there's, 100 or 1,000 AI tools out there. Like it's just one. So, if it's the same technology, just choose one and focus on it. So like literally it would be, if your company uses Google products, just focus on Gemini. If you're already using ChatGPT, just use OpenAI's ChatGPT and their Codex
Mm.
product. If you're curious and want to experiment, you can sign up for Claude and use Claude and its tools and Cowork and Claude Code, and just stick with it. Like I said, one tool, one process, 1 month, and one source of information, and I think you'll be leagues ahead of everyone else.
Mm. When you say one source of information, what do you mean by that exactly?
Like one Twitter feed, like not your 100 of Twitter people that you follow on Twitter, one YouTube channel, not all of AI YouTube. Just choose one source that publishes like on a weekly basis or so, and you'll be more than caught up on what's going on. So consume roughly an hour, maybe 90 minutes a week on what's new, because like the consumption even over creation disease is real.
Yeah.
So many people just consume so much information without actually creating. And I think you need to flip it, and it needs to be the inverse. So you need to spend 40 hours building a week and 2 or 3 consuming.
No, that's super interesting. And I feel like right now we have on social media and stuff, there's so many people talking about all the best tools to use and the stack you should use and all of this. So like, how do you see that? Is that just people
It's
talking
noise.
or
It's hype.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You
all
think
it
it's just
is.
noise?
Well, I mean, it's a new technology, so there's going to be a gold rush, and there's going to be people that will be able to make a name for themselves, gain clout. It's like, oh, okay, like they're the hype man, hype girl. They know all the best stuff. But in most cases, they're not actually using those tools themselves. They're just writing the hype cycle and saying, oh yeah, use this, because that's what gets them attention and clicks. When it's the people that go into monk mode and they choose one tool, they choose even one like part of that tool to focus on for a week or even a month. And then before they know it, they've shipped 5 or 6 things that's delivering real value into their business, instead of jumping between tools, getting, projects started but never finished.
I see. Interesting. So when you talk about just using one tool, because I've experimented with AI a fair amount, I feel, and I'm still not fully understanding how one could build a fully, not even autonomous, but just employee that could do a lot of the work inside the business. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on how somebody could actually build an AI employee that could help them let's say it's a solo entrepreneur, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying, that has nobody else around them. How could they go about building? Is it just using Gemini and doing a bunch of what are they called, master prompts, and making sure that the parameters are set and all of that, or how do you think that goes?
There's many ways to approach it, but so like if I were to work with you, Barrett, I think the first thing I would do is get you a chief of staff agent that their sole purpose is just to understand you and your business better than even you do, so that it can help you identify all the parts of the business that are, should be eliminated. Hey, just stop doing this. Things that could be delegated to AI, and even things that could be fully automated through, through programs, applications, and AI. And through conversations with that singular agent, it'll help you identify and build other things. So to give you a concrete example, so like after this podcast, I could share with you this chief of staff agent, and you could use it in either Gemini, a ChatGPT, or Claude, but we'll take Claude as the example. You'll spend maybe an hour to 90 minutes being interviewed and share everything about your business so that it knows and has that context. And you can kind of level up in the tools within Claude. So you can start in chat, and that's level 1. You can go back and forth and interview with it. Then maybe after a few weeks and you've been working with it, you can move over into the co-work tool, which gives Claude access to files on your computer. It can use, your internet browser to do things on the web for you. And then when you're comfortable with that and it's been doing work on your behalf in that tool, you can graduate to Claude Code, where you can then begin to create your own applications and your own agents with that tool to continue to ladder yourself up in the levels of your AI adoption inside of your business.
I see. So you really don't think there's one model that stands out over another when it comes to doing this style of work?
If you look at all the benchmarking and you take all the benchmarks with a grain of salt, the difference between performing, 84% versus 81% versus 76% in terms of these benchmarks, that difference is so small. That's a 10%, 12% difference between those models. Unless you're in a hyper competitive industry where arbitrage and everything is like super important, it doesn't matter if you don't even have to use the frontier models. Like, I'm still getting so much value out of the smaller and cheaper models because of the tokenomics. Like, what people don't understand is if you're using the latest models and the latest tools, you're spending the most on those tokens. And most of those tokens are being wasted. You're spending a lot of money because it's not directly applying value into your business. And instead, what you should do is be sure that you're using the right model, that you have the process set up in the right way, so that every dollar you spend in tokens, you're getting $5, $10, $50 in value back from what you're spending. What I'm seeing now, like with all this token maxing and these leaderboards, is people are just lighting money on fire and sending it to the model makers. It's absolutely the wrong way to go about it.
Interesting. So kind of to hop to a different point, I've heard a lot about how, we're kind of at the frontier point of this AI generation and stuff like that. Do you see the models now, like the baseline models, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, do you see those being what we use in 5-10 years, or do you think there'll be spin-offs off of those models that we kind of use more? You know what I mean?
I'm glad there are 3 players in the market, 3 big players in the marketplace. I would be very worried if there were only one. I think for a long time, people thought that OpenAI may have been the only player in the market. So I'm really happy to see both Anthropic and Google. They've kind of been rotating the last 2 years as far as, who in public opinion is on top. It's going to be very hard for any other players, except for maybe some of the Chinese model makers, to be able to overcome them. So that the kind of asterisk here is, I would say, the top 3 players that you just mentioned, and probably 1 or 2 of the Chinese model makers. There's going to be 5 players, I think, at least for the next 5 years. And I don't think you can go wrong with any of them, including the Chinese options, with carve-outs for, folks that have like cybersecurity and privacy questions. But, if you're doing, So that's a caveat there.
Interesting. So, no, AI is super interesting right now, and I feel like do you agree that we're kind of in the first inning-ish of the AI boom, or do you think we're more towards the middle innings of it? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this kind of comes back to, looking at actual measurement of usage inside of businesses. I feel like if you're using AI tools every single day, you're one of the leaders and early adopters. If you think about the crossing the chasm diagram, that gets shared out there. I still don't think we've actually crossed the chasm. I feel like we're getting close to it where, and I would probably define it where like a majority of folks that are on a computer are using AI tools. I mean, I understand there's a big population that just don't work on computers every day, but so I would say we're kind of bottom of the first inning, about to go into the second.
Interesting. So kind of along the lines of going more deep and technical into, building these spin-offs in the models to where they could do your work. What does it really take to make an employee or an AI that could do some of the work in your business? Is it a lot of just context and stuff? Because I know AI is super context heavy.
The models are getting so intelligent now that you don't actually need to give it a whole lot of instruction. Instead, if you give it a goal to achieve, it will figure out how to do it. So I think we've kind of moved from, well, you have to give it all of the information about your business and all of the steps to take and the goal to achieve. And you can kind of go from that to just giving it the goal that you want to accomplish. So one of the most recent examples of something that I built for myself is Polypodcaster. And I love alliteration and I like to give my agents names. So her sole purpose is to help prepare me for these podcast episodes. And I probably spent maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours going back and forth in my coding tool to create it. And now it helps me prepare for all of these podcasts. So, I went from an idea of like, I've got all these podcasts coming up. I want to have some help preparing for them. I spent maybe an hour being interviewed by it to kind of just understand what I needed help from it to do. Then I spent another hour kind of kicking off some coding tasks. It worked overnight. And then I woke up in the morning and had Polypodcaster that now lives in my Slack. And I can just ask her, hey, I'm connecting with Barrett on his podcast tomorrow. Can you help me prepare for the episode? So it gave me, a list of all your previous episodes, one that I should listen to on my way into my co-working space, and, some of the topics that we should talk about. So, I created in 2 hours something that's probably going to save me probably 4 or 5 hours a week, because I'm doing probably 5 or 6 podcasts a week now in kind of my podcast blitz to just get out there and talk about AI.
Interesting. So I'm curious what your AI told you we should talk about today.
Here, I'll bring it up.
Yeah, please.
So some of the things it said we should talk about is how founders kind of quietly become the bottleneck inside of their businesses without them knowing it. And before they know it, they're overwhelmed. They don't know where to start. And, they have this belief that AI can solve everything for them, but they don't know where to get started. So that was one talking point. And then another one it gave us was, how can we turn our reputable work into AI agents that we can build in hours that augments you instead of replacing you in your business? So those are two that I just pulled up.
Interesting. So let's go a little bit deeper on that. Along the first lines, what are your thoughts around that? I'm curious. Because I do feel that, even in my own business, I've found that I can be a big bottleneck, and I don't even, it's just me right now. So it's not even like I have a team that has to report to me or anything like that. But I could definitely see where, that becomes a problem.
Yeah, I think it's like some self-delusion. Part of it is like pride. Part of it is fear. It's like kind of all of those wrapped up together. But I think the fear that most entrepreneurs have is that only they kind of truly know and understand what they believe is possible out there in the world and in the market as they're applying their unique ability to whatever, they're trying to do. And yes, and there's so many areas of your business that you're operating in that you don't need to be, and you need to get the hell out of so that you can stay focused in your unique ability. So what happens is we think that because we're good at this one thing, we're good at all the things. And like, it's this, constant tug of war between being a generalist versus being a specialist. And I think the entrepreneurs that are able to get to scale fastest are the ones that become specialists and hire and work with specialists, whether that's a human or an AI agent, to achieve that scale.
And that's super interesting because, just along the lines of just using AI to further yourself in business, I've heard it from numerous amount of people, there's really no better time to build business than right now because we have all the resources we have now. And with AI, like you said, like our podcast is about today, you could spin up agents that do a lot of the work that, you would have to hire people for that would cost you, 5x the amount of money.
Right. You can still spend way too much on AI if you get it wrong. But yes, I feel like now, like I've worked with VAs and freelancers a ton. My whole creative studio business was built around, working with really highly talented freelancers. So I think like As an entrepreneur, if you've never worked with someone, like if you haven't hired someone, you've not worked with a VA, you've not had a small team or worked with freelancers, maybe start working with the human first to get that human feedback on what it means to delegate. Oh no, like I'm confused. I don't understand what you mean when you say that you need me to do this. You need a little bit of that training, I feel like, in real life experience first before you can really be effective with AI. So if you don't have that experience, I would maybe even say, hey, like reach out to a VA, work with a freelancer first for some things and, make it a short contract, give it a small scope of things you want to get done. But you'll learn so much in that experience that you can take to, okay, well, I learned a lot about what it means to, like, what do I actually need for my content marketing? What are all the, what is my voice and how do I want to show up on these platforms? Like get that experience with the person. And then I think you can begin to work with an AI and an agent so that you're not necessarily like replacing people. So then the next person you work with is like maybe a sales advisor that's going to help you with your sales funnel. And then once you've worked with them and kind of understood how that works in your business, then you can think about, replacing it with an AI agent. But like you yourself, the entrepreneurs, never replacing your unique ability and service.
Right.
So like, if you're a coach or a consultant out there, like never replace putting yourself in front of the client and doing the coaching and doing the training, doing the consulting, never replace that with an AI. But like all the menial stuff behind the scenes, like you said, finances and accounting and all that, like, yeah, just offload that.
Interesting. And I think that's a big misconception that a lot of people have. And I've heard a lot of people talk about that is that you don't want to replace your strong suit, your superpower. You know what I mean? That's like what your business runs off of, right? And have you seen a lot of people kind of try to do that and try to mess with their superpower and offload it to an AI and try to have them do it?
Those are the worst experiences that I've seen business owners have with AI. So if you're a digital marketing agency and you specialize in creating email campaigns that have high click-through rates, if the first thing you do is offload AI to write those campaigns on behalf of your clients, you're going to lose those clients in a heartbeat. People can smell AI written content from a mile away now. So that's absolutely the wrong approach to using AI in that specific niche. And I've seen that happen where, like, at first, like the client's incredulous. They're like, did they just get really stupid or is this AI? And it's how you lose trust with your clients.
Interesting. So this kind of just came to my head. If an entrepreneur is trying to start a more hands-on business, let's say it's a retail business, maybe even like a clothing line or maybe like a construction business, even something where it's not very tech heavy, how do you think somebody could introduce tech into their stack so they could be more efficient?
Technology permeates all businesses, no matter kind of how human and in person it is. So, I'm having work done on my house by a contractor. They're doing some excavation and work in the basement. Communications is a little difficult with them, and the whole kind of like proposal scoping and deposit payment system was like a little too manual and kind of stop start. So like in that instance, what if that contractor could come in, have their phone open, take a video and narrate, okay, here's the site, here's the project, here's what I think we should do. That gets uploaded to an AI. It automatically does a line item for, all of the things. It has their pricing sheet so it knows what it should charge for all of that. And then like by the time they get home from driving from the job site, there's a proposal ready for them to review and send to the client. There are already some tools out there that are doing similar sorts of things like that. A few of them are using AI. Some of them are more just like traditional applications, but that and even just like managing their communications in inbox. So it's like, instead of waiting for the client to text them like, hey, are you going to be on the job site today? Like, what's the schedule? Like, are we ahead or behind? Like, when is my next deposit payment? All of those sorts of things could be automated behind the scenes so that person can be on the job site managing the crews instead of stuck at their computer
doing emails.
Right. On their truck dashboard, just like doing emails and sending text messages.
Right. No, that's super interesting. I think, there's always you just have to kind of get creative, right? Like when you're in your business and you got to think kind of what could be automated. And like you said, you don't want to automate everything and not have a team there first because then it'll kind of mess up the flow. But what do you think that relationship is when you get into business like that? Is it just, hire on maybe somebody, like you said, a freelancer on a short contract first, just to see how you could do it in person before you do that?
Yeah. And something that I've really just begun to see maybe in like the last 3 or 4 months, is for the businesses that are truly adopting AI in the ways that are most beneficial to their businesses and achieving scale, they're actually hiring even more humans to help them. So like if you can automate away the parts of the business that aren't the biggest value drivers to your customers, if you do that, then you can just have and hire more people that are operating in that zone of unique ability and genius to deliver
Right.
even more value. So it's like, I'm struggling like with the right analogy here, but like the entrepreneurs that figure out how to work with AI, that automation and delegation to AI is causing them to hire more because of the acceleration in their business they're achieving
Right.
with that scale. So I actually think it's a virtuous cycle instead of a vicious cycle in terms of more opportunities for people inside of businesses plus AI. It's not AI even over people, it's AI or
Right.
it's people plus AI.
Right, because they were just making more revenue, right? They have to, their business is just growing faster and they just need more people in the business to help them with the work, right?
Yeah. So like, we'll come back to the digital marketer, you might only be able to have one, maybe two client meetings a day, where you're talking with the client, understanding the project and moving that work forward because of all the other stuff you have to do in your business. So maybe an
Right.
hour, 90 minutes max is spent in interfacing with your clients because you're writing proposals, you're monitoring performance of campaigns, you're writing new campaigns. If you have AI help you in your business, then like you could be taking 5 or even 6 client meetings a day, and then you're getting even more business. So then you have to hire another salesperson and implementation person so that, you're each taking 6 calls a day. And so like I really see it as a compounding effect in terms of needing more humans inside of your businesses because the humans are so focused on delivering their unique ability. It's like, the $10 an hour activity versus the $100 versus the $1,000. And maybe even in some businesses, like a $10,000 hour, it's like if you're focused in your unique ability and you've got your product market fit and you're serving the perfect client with the perfect offer, you could be earning, effectively $10,000 an hour so that every hour you're not in that unique ability, you're foregoing that $10,000
Right.
in revenue.
Interesting. So kind of just off that, I'm curious where you've been working with the most businesses, like what niche you've been working with the most businesses to help implement AI systems and AI employees.
Yeah. So your first example in content marketing is one that's very easy to offload for folks that have had a strategy that has worked in the past. So like if you have a unique voice and you can kind of point to, yeah, this is what makes me me, then I think there's a lot of tools that you can bring to bear that can just help kind of extract your genius and your perspective and just help do the grunt work of creating draft content for your review and even like, doing drafts and potentially even posting it on your behalf. So that's one area I think that's kind of an easy win. Most folks don't like to do that, like unless you're in the content marketing or social media management space. And the other area is like one path that I like to try to take through a business. It's like ask the question, what's the quickest path to the next dollar? So for service-based businesses, it's pretty much like taking client meetings, sending proposals, and getting signed agreements. So one area is in sales and implementation where let's have an agent that does sales meeting prep in the same way that the podcast prep does. It's like, hey, just research this person, see how our offer meets their needs and give me the talking points and, questions that I should be sure to ask on the call. The call is recorded. The agent sees the recording and the transcript and automatically, crafts a proposal based on your kind of your offerings and what it thinks is the best fit. You choose that, and then you send that proposal off to then the agent follows up with them, sending them reminders if they haven't closed. Hey, do you want to hop on another call? It's been a while since we connected. And then once they sign the contract, like all of the onboarding steps of like, okay, like getting them into Slack and sharing the Google Drive and, sharing accounts and everything like that, the agent can help with that so that it cuts the time from closing a client from like maybe 3 months down to like just a week or 2.
Right. Interesting. No, that's so true. And no, that's super interesting. I have a few rapid fire questions that I wanted to ask.
Bring it.
So let's do it. What's one task you believe every business could automate today? I know it's a general question, but it's a hard question. But
One task. I think that every business owner could offload their inbox management. So just in any and all inbound communications, whether that's on Slack, email, whatever the communications tools you use, to surface just the 3 things that you need to respond to in that given day. So like, I'm of the opinion, it's like, if you only do 3 things and they're the most important things in the day, you've probably done a lot more than most people. So there's a lot of tools out there, I feel like, that you can use to manage those inbound communications, to understand, okay, what are the 3 things that I must do today to just help you prioritize your day.
I get that. What do you think is the most underrated tool entrepreneurs can use right now?
Most underrated tool.
Most underrated and overrated. Let's do both.
I don't know if this is a tool, but it's like a setting you can change. If you can just eliminate all of your notifications across all of your devices, I think that'll be a huge unlock. And overrated, that's a hard one. I think any like niche specific tool, so like AI for blank, I think those tools are overrated and under threat by the main big 3 players. So like, not to call out anyone specifically, but it's like AI for generating slides, or AI for writing email marketing campaigns, or AI for sending sales proposals. There's a very short half-life, I feel like, for those tools because of all the capabilities that the big players are creating, both in what the models are capable of and then the applications and the harnesses that those models use. Like,
right.
Google and Anthropic and OpenAI are just kind of eating all of the other players out there.
That's super interesting, because I have heard a few people talk about how they think, there's the baseline, the base models, and then all the applications that are going to be built on top are actually going to be the ones that are like making the revenue in the foreseeable future. And it sounds like you don't believe that necessarily.
I think this swiftness of development of new companies and businesses, like in the same way that like you can start up a startup and get something to market really quickly. It's like, well, yeah, like you're self-funded, maybe you have some seed money, but these big model makers, they're raising tens of billions of dollars, at hundreds of billions, maybe even $1 trillion valuation. So like, it's just, they have too much money to not be able to also build a great tools. I'm not saying that there's not a place for it or even a time, but I feel like, I feel like the specialized, I'm forgetting the exact term, but it's just the wrappers. So like all these wrapper companies, you have, just wrap ChatGPT in this. And then like, I think those companies will be fairly short-lived.
Interesting. This isn't a rapid fire question, but it just came to my head. So do you think, I've heard a lot of people talk about the AI agency space and the AI consulting space. Do you think that's a good space for people to get into moving forward?
I think it depends on what your background is and kind of your desire to help clients. I mean, if you're just in it to make a quick buck, like you're going to get weeded out pretty quickly, because you can have some huge faceplant moments if you don't know what you're doing, whether that's like security or data privacy related, or just, shipping slop out there. But I think if you have a deep curiosity about how businesses work and how they deliver value to their customers, and you can create quick, rapid prototypes, test in the market, and iterate those applications, I feel like those 2 things will get you a long ways, even if you don't have a whole lot of experience with the tools. And then thirdly, like nothing replaces just deep experience and working with these tools on a day-to-day basis. So I would just say start small, start with yourself and your own business. Be sure that you can prove the value to yourself, and then go to a trusted client referral to work with before you kind of hang your shingle out and say, yes, okay, this is what I can do for you and your business. Because like I said, there's some shady players out there. There's some shady hype folks that are overhyping things. And I feel like it's the people that just genuinely want to help businesses deliver value to customers. They're hyper curious and can have a really tight, like design, build, test, refined loop. Those are the people that will succeed in the space.
That makes sense. So kind of along those lines, where do you think people can go to learn more about AI and how to implement, and maybe even how to build these AI workflows and employees and stuff?
I think the best sources are actually the model makers themselves. So I think the engineering blogs for Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT and Codex are really fantastic resources. So go and read those blogs about what their engineering teams are doing. There's also some really great articles from companies like Stripe and Cloudflare that essentially give their blueprint for how they've implemented agents in their companies. And it can be really technical, but if you chat back and forth with your AI and just say like, hey, just like explain it like I'm 5 or explain it like I'm in high school, you can begin to learn how those companies are creating it. So that's where I would actually start, even over like a third-party source. And of course, like you can go to my website. I have an agent there that you can interact with and give you this chief of staff agent for free. And if you kind of chat with it a few times, it'll actually ping me via Telegram and say, hey, like there's someone on your website. Do you want to chat with them? And so I can kind of jump in and hijack the conversation for that as well. But, I think choosing one tool, choosing one source, like the makers as the source, and choosing your one workflow that's delivering one really valuable piece of product or service, like that's what you should do.
That's super interesting. What's one role you think AI will never fully replace?
I don't think that an AI could be like a soulmate.
I didn't think you were going to take it that way.
I mean, like I wasn't, they could probably be a life partner. Like I think there are people that are lonely, have maybe trouble relating to people on a deep level. And like, I think AI companions are truly valuable. I mean, I work with a company that works in the senior healthcare space, and most folks, when they age, are just lonely. So I think that companionship is real, but like to be a true soulmate, I don't think it'll ever get there.
Interesting. So what's one place you think, so that's super interesting, because do you think that's a place where somebody could go into the AI field and maybe spin something up like that? Like what are some areas you think somebody could go into the AI space and spin a product up and see success from?
So these are my favorite conversations to have with AI as a thought partner. So the very first thing I did when Fable came out, so we're June 26th, was exactly this exercise. So to test this model, I'm like, okay, you're a highly capable model. Here's your system card and all of your capabilities. Spin up a bunch of sub-agents to go and do research on how we might apply you and, your capabilities in underserved places and markets. And like, what are businesses that I could maybe scale to $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 in monthly recurring revenue? It worked for 9 hours overnight and came back.
Wow.
It looked at, I think, over 3,000 options, narrowed it down to, the top 20 or so. And it created this wiki page for me that gave me a brief on each of them. And it was like really random and esoteric things like Supreme Court briefings and tariff monitoring and complex medical coding and billing issues. Like there's so many rich niches out there, I think, in the application of data and AI that, think about in your business or in your industry, like the kind of hidden pieces of knowledge and information that are opaque or kind of difficult to understand, where there have been historical barriers to access or understanding, and then just like create a robust data layer that's organized in a way that AI can be layered on top of it that can then provide value to the user. I think there's hundreds, if not thousands, of those kinds of businesses. I know that there's like product agencies or like venture studios, I guess was the term I'm thinking, where there's venture companies that have these product studios that are launching a SaaS a week now, even with applying AI to these rich niches.
So that you think they're just spinning up models and then spinning up ideas and then seeing what sticks? Like when they make...
Yeah. I mean, whether they're coming up with the ideas or AI it's so fast to spin up a prototype, spin up a marketing campaign, spin up a landing page, throw a couple of ads at it and just see what sticks. I'm remembering like 10 years ago, we would spend a week to develop just a simple landing page kind of conversion funnel. And now you can do it in 5 minutes. So just the speed at which we can test things is incredible. So like the lean startup movement, I feel like was almost like 10, 15 years too early. And I think some people have kind of forgotten that era, but so like going back and reading Lean Startup by Eric Ries and kind of all of the thinking and proteges that came out of that, like I think you could apply that same business methodology now, and just the pace of being able to spin up those businesses and test and get feedback from the market is so much shorter now. And that's what these venture studios are doing.
So do you think right now and moving forward, obviously, is the best time to build a lean startup and just start your own business?
I mean, I'm a little biased. I've only ever worked for myself.
Yeah.
So I think everyone has the capability and capacity to take their unique ability and package it and deliver it to the market themselves without having to be an employee. It's just like a life philosophy of mine. I understand people have different access and tools and resources available to them, but like everyone can set aside a free weekend. Everyone has that idea that has been nagging them for weeks, months, maybe even years. And there's now effectively no friction between imagination and creation. And like, I'm getting chills because like that is, I think, truly the power of AI is like the abundance of your imagination now no longer has guardrails on it. It's just like
limitations.
Yeah. Like there's relatively no or little risk to turning your idea into something, but it's really important that you be sure you put it in front of other people because that feedback is really important. So don't just spin up your idea and be like, okay, like I did it. Yay, it works. Like you need that feedback from the market or your user to be sure like, yes, this is helpful. Yes, I will pay for this. And then you run that cycle over and over and over again. And you might come up with 10 ideas and only one sticks, but you can do those 10 ideas in just 10 days, not 10 years.
Right. No, that makes so much sense. Well, Chad, that's all I have for you. Anything else you want to leave our audience with?
No, this has been really, really fun, Barrett. And just if you want to connect with me, I'm not on social media, so you'll have to go to my website, stimulus.io, chat with my chatbot. And like I said, if I'm available, I'm not on Do Not Disturb. It'll ping me and we can chat. But yeah, that's the best way to get in touch with me.
Nice. I appreciate you for coming on. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was super in-depth, and I think AI is a super interesting concept right now that a lot of people, there's a lot of noise around, like we said, you know what I mean? And it's really hard to find just kind of the regular people that just kind of interact with it on a day-to-day, you know what I mean? Not the Dan Martells and all those people that are just kind of talking about whatever. So I really appreciate you for coming on and giving the audience a grasp of what AI could do for them in their small business, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you've had such great guests on the podcast. Like I'm kind of hungry for like a panel, where we get a few folks on.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I'll have to look into that because that is a great idea.
Yeah.
If you would like to come on, I'll let you know when we do one because that's a great idea and I'll have to do that for sure.
Yeah, that's me just being selfish because I'm hungry to learn, and I love learning from real humans, like you said, not the hype folks on YouTube or on Twitter.
No, for sure.